Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a video on the best ways to save money in old school RuneScape. Of course, GP is what makes the world go round. It's what allows you to get XP, maintain your bank value, build up gear, all these different things that you can do through keeping your gold and building what you have. So today, I wanted to go ahead and give my best tips in regards to how to go about that and what things you should be doing to keep that bank value growing over time. So let's go ahead and get on into it. So the first tip is a fun one that I have done throughout all of my playing days of old school RuneScape, and that is keeping a tab for your drops. If you are someone that likes to do Slayer, if you want to do some bossing, if you want to kill a lot of a certain monster, do a certain attribute of PVM, go ahead and make a Slayer tab for it or bank tab for it. That is the most fun way to go about it, in my opinion. It will take a little bit of time. You'll have to set up some items and sort of make an entire layout for it. But once you have that, that is going to be one of the best things that you can do. Because it's just really satisfying to look at, seeing you build up and keep on attaining these new items and seeing that value go up as well is just really rewarding overall. It then encourages you to keep on pushing forward and to keep on going out and getting more of these items, which is always great. And at the same time, you'll be building up a tab of money that will be stored away. Now, at some point, you will have to sell your tab, and that will be a painful time, but once you go ahead and cash out, then you have a ton of money to spend elsewhere and put into gear. Now, realistically, it's probably better to sell off the tab as you get it so you can reinvest in gear, but the gear upgrades you're probably going to make will be somewhat minuscule, and if you have enough gear at the moment anyways, then it's definitely more fun to go about it this way. The game's about fun, not always efficiency, so this is one thing that I really enjoy and have always done. The next tip I have is to hold off on construction until you want to go ahead and get 83 or 84 and really max out your house. Now, if you want to get 50, 60 construction, just a med-level construction, that's perfectly fine. There are some useful rooms in your house that you can go ahead and make with that. However, personally, unless you're an Iron Man, I really don't feel like the house has a ton of utility at the med level. You can buy all the teleports you need and make all of the items you need through the Grand Exchange, so you really don't need to have unlimited uses in your house, really. And it's just going to waste extra time because you're going to have to teleport into your house, then go over and use things when you could just have them in the bank in the first place. Getting up to 83, 84 construction is going to cost 10, 20 mil, somewhere in there, depending on how you do it. And then beyond that, you're going to have to spend 10, 20, 30 mil on your house as well to be able to upgrade it to the point at which it is maxed. So with that said, it's a very costly thing to do. So make sure you really wait until you need it and you have all of the GP appropriate. You don't want to sink it in as you go because that's GP you could have put elsewhere and used in other ways. Opportunity cost is important. Another great tip for saving some money, especially during this taxable era of the Grand Exchange, is to slow sell and slow buy your items from the Grand Exchange. If you use an app like GE Tracker where you can go ahead and just look at prices and what they're buying and selling for, there's always going to be a margin in between the buy price and the sell price. So if you're selling an item, choose the higher price and just wait it out. If you're buying an item, choose the lower price and just wait it out. Now, of course, this depends on what the margin is and if it's really worth waiting and spending your time just sort of slow playing it. But especially if you're going to be doing some skilling long term, you really want to spend as little as you can and really just do it slowly, since you'll have all the time in the world to buy those items for those skills. If you're doing some PVM, maybe it's not as important, maybe you're in a rush, but if you can afford to do it, if you have the time to be able to do it, just take it slow and make a little bit extra money by either being a little too cheap on what you are buying or being a little too pricey on what you're selling. It's a great way to go ahead and keep a little bit more money in your pocket, especially in an era where the GE is taxing 1% on most everything you sell. In addition to that, if you have a friend or a clan group or just a bunch of people that sort of trust each other, you can collat items, which is where you trade them some items and they'll trade you some other items of equal value, and that way you can buy and sell items essentially without having to buy and sell them and get taxed for that. Now, in the same vein of gear buying and selling, one thing that I'd recommend doing is buying a ton of cheap items rather than one expensive item. Typically, that's going to be the best way to go about your gear selection in old school RuneScape, because especially with the tax nowadays, if you're going to buy a big item, whenever you need to sell it to go buy little items, whenever you want to change up what you're doing, you're going to be eating a lot of cost in tax, and in addition to that, it's just going to waste a lot of time. So it's much better to have a ton of cheap items that are really useful for you, rather than having that one big item that really isn't going to do all that much for you. It might be nice in its niche uses, but the only items that are really worth putting all of your money into would be the big ticket weapon items, maybe like a twisted bow or scythe, depending on what you're doing. And even then, you have to be really particular, and you have to know you're going to camp bosses that can use those items for. Now we'll talk about some ways to go ahead and put your money to use for you. If you want to take the easy route about it, my first tip would be to go ahead and just buy bonds. There are times where bonds are at a cheap price and you can buy in on them, and over time they will go up. Typically, as we can see from this graph, over time bond prices tend to go upwards as there's just more and more GP in the game. But bonds are a lot like a real life, just safety investment that you know over time is going to steadily rise, and that's a great way to go about it. Now, of course, you want to look at the graphs, make sure you're not buying in at an all-time high, because then you might, not be in the best spot. But a little extra tip, if you want to buy in on these, typically buy in on the weekends. Saturday, Sunday is going to be the best time, considering that's when they're at their lowest. They had this weekly sort of cyclical cycle. And Tuesday and Wednesdays are probably the worst time to buy. So just a little added note there, but it's a great way to maintain your value, especially if you're going to quit old school RuneScape for, say, however long. We all never really quit, but whenever you come back, you will have maintained value, while a lot of items in game don't maintain their value as well as bonds will. Then the next tip for putting your money to use is going to be flipping or merching. That's a great way to sort of build up money in a more active route. You could see it as day trading the grain exchange. Essentially, what you're doing is just buying items at their low price and then selling at their high price, sort of what I was talking about earlier in terms of slowly selling and buying items. In general, you can do that in a much more active way, and this way you can basically make a percent of money on whatever money you are putting to work for you in the grain exchange. I have a ton of flipping guides that you can go ahead and check out down below, and I plan in the future to do sort of a flipping 101 series where I kind of run through everything that is useful in that regard. So if you guys are excited for that, feel free to drop a sub and be alerted as soon as that goes live. In addition to that, if you're enjoying the video, feel free to leave a like, would appreciate it greatly. And also down below, feel free to leave any sort of tips that you would like others to know in terms of how they could best save their money in a long-term sense. But with that said, flipping is an amazing way of going and just putting your money to use for you and being able to churn in more and more. And personally, I find it really exciting. I find it really fun. Some people don't. So if it's for you, you'll really enjoy it. And you actually learn a lot about markets. While it is just a silly game example, there are a lot of real world applications that you could take from it. I'm not saying you're going to be Warren Buffett by the end of your RuneScape merching endeavors, but you'll at least be a step closer to that. On your skilling adventures, there are a couple ways that you could go ahead and save money or also build up your money. The first good way of being able to save some money is whenever you're doing fletching. A lot of people think of it as a slow skill or a fast skill that you're going to have to spend a lot of money on, but it can actually be a really fast skill that you don't have to spend much money on at all. The best way to go about fletching in a fast way is through making dragon bolts, because you can turn unfinished dragon bolts into dragon bolts with just some feathers, and essentially there's rarely ever a big margin between the two. It's going to be a lot less GP per XP than any sort of darts that you could be making or anything else in general, and it's extremely fast, just as fast as being able to go ahead and fletch. It has a ton of demand. There are a ton of people using crossbows nowadays, and dragon bolts and variants of dragon bolts are going to be the best way of going about that. So there's always going to be this need for them to come into the game. And so with that, you can find a nice little way to go ahead and get your fletching up to 99 in a cheap way that will be very, very quick as well. Another way to accrue a lot of money over time with just a little bit more effort would be to do your combat through Slayer. I know a lot of people like to AFK at Ammonite Crabs or Nightmare Zone or whatever your choice of melee method is, but at the end of the day, Slayer is going to be the best way to go about it. If you want to train your RuneScape account over time, you're going to want to get up your Slayer anyways, and your Slayer is going to get up your other skills. So you may as well do it anyways, just in the sense of efficiency for your account. But in addition to that, you get a ton of Slayer drops that are going to really build up your bank over time. And in addition to that, there are a ton of bosses that you can unlock later in the game that are going to make you some really good money, like Cerberus, Abyssal Sire if you're into that, Hydra as well, and there's plenty of others that you could throw in there as well. And there's also a ton of other boss task variants that you can add into your Slayer adventures. And so really it's just a great way of making your account more efficient and building your bank in a better manner. It's going to outpace any AFK method by far in terms of how good it is for your account. Now for protecting your account and the money you already have, the first tip would be to just make sure that your account is generally secure. A lot of people don't think that they're going to get hacked. You know, it could never happen to me. I don't really click any sketchy links. I don't tell people my password. You know, I'm fine. It's connected to my email's safe, all this jazz. But at the end of the day, a ton of people get hacked. It really does happen a lot. I see it in my clan chat all the time. So the best way to make sure that this doesn't happen is to have the authenticator on your Runescape account. You can set that up through the Runescape site. In addition to that, go in game and set up a bank pin. It just takes a few seconds. Every time you log in, it will be a bit annoying to have to put it in, but there is a RuneLite feature that you can turn on your bank pin to be on your number pad, and then you can just real quick type it out. And beyond that, make sure there's also two-factor authenticator on your email as well, because if your email gets compromised, then they can go ahead and hack your account that way. So make sure your email's safe, your account's safe, and your bank pin is safe, and then from there, you're as good as you can be. There's still examples of people still getting hacked, but it's much more rare at that point. So make sure that you have those steps in place to be able to protect what you already have. And then finally, not everyone in game is a saint, so just be wary. Be wary. I would say in general, whenever you're, loaning gear out to friends or clanmates, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you really truly feel like you know the person enough to where it's kind of worth it to get scammed, I guess. If I have a really good friend and he scams me for a couple $100 mil, it's not going to kill my bank, and it'll also tell me that that person is a piece of trash, and that's okay. You sort of just have to make that calculated decision yourself, but know how much you can trust people. If they're really your friend, maybe you can trust them with a little bit, but maybe not a lot. At the end of the day, know that you're taking a risk if you loan anyone anything, and in addition to that, random strangers are not going to help you out in game. You know, they might give you little tips here and there, they might answer a question if you have it, but there's no one that's going to just give you free money for doing something. So whenever you go to the Grand Exchange and you see all these different scams that are going on where someone's trying to buy items for way over the GE price when they're right next to the Grand Exchange, just think it out. It really doesn't make much sense. Why would these random people in game want to let you take all their money, or why would they let you get in on their money-making scheme? It's really, at the end of the day, their money-making scheme. So just be wary and be cautious and be protective of the cash you already have, and that's going to be the best way to go ahead and make sure there are no major setbacks that really throw you off the track of building your bank. So yeah, that is my tips for how to save your GP in old school RuneScape. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. If you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. And with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.